this is IBM Museum. And previously I had a Mul 60 with those MFM controllers. The MFM controller being on the low end, Mul 60 and Mul 80. I didn't kind of come to the completion or go use that as a seg into the ESDI controllers. But I have another Mul 60 that's got the ESDI controller and hard drive to it, although it looks very similar to the MFM. But I'm going to get turned around and kind of start going through things to the ESDI controllers. Now, I do have a lot of controller boards here. I'm relatively certain that this system is going to start up. I don't have the postcode reader connected to it, just because I'm that confident in this case on this system. It's got a newer battery in there. I know that I've worked with this system sometime in the previous months. The configuration's good. I just have the ESDI controller and the expanded memory controller down here on the bottom. And hopefully this will go through and work for me. I mean, it looks complete. As an upcoming live stream, I actually have a Mul 60, a 65SX, which is a little bit uncommon, and then a Type 3 Mul 80 planer that I got from Edgar Digital in Las Cruces, New Mexico. And they look rough. I'm going to do the live stream in the new studio to where I have those, and we can just see what condition they're in and go through to work on them. But I know that this sheet is clean. I'm not, even though I have a stack of controllers here, this is primarily this to show the focus of this particular topic relating to the ESDI controller. I'm not going to go through and relatively test all these. I've gone through and previously I likely had one of these that I was running through and switching the microcode on to test. But let me see if I've got variants of the two. In fact, I've got one here with cables on it. That one's missing the microcode. Okay, well, I've got one here. These over here. Oh, that looks all the same style. And I'd even have to get through and look. In fact, it'd probably be good for me to pull up the page, set things aside and pull up the page and kind of start with the page in this case. So this is a page that I've shown before at the Arden Tool, where when I went over the MFM controllers, and just lower on the page, it's a combined page since the adapters are so similar that we're going to jump to this link here, the early ESDI controller. And that actually shows a really good picture for all that, because the main difference is this orientation of the ROM chip. This would be effectively the early. Now I have one of these in this case, and it doesn't have the blue end tab on this. And all the other ones are with the ROM of the microcode in another orientation, 9 degrees out of this. But you'll see, the markings on there, and go through and I'll get I'll return to the page in a moment. Of course, I'll also link that in the video description. Just want to make sure I've got the entire field of view here. And it shows an FRU on here. And we look through and these other, even though the label's different, that chip's going to stretch up. Man, that's even kind of grimy board there. But let me see if I can get one that has a really good. Now, I'm not really memorizing the. That label looks a little bit better condition. So that 15F6807, that being different from others. That one's got the same. I'll bring that up in a moment because that's got the cabling and things like that on there. That one's missing the microcode EEPROM. Pulled it off for testing. Let's look at this one and see. Well, it's the same microcode. Well, I do have some versions around. Okay, 15F6587 for the microcode. And then you notice that the EEPROM's here, and this is actually for the ROM extension of the system BIOS for basically telling a little bit more of the geometry of the drive, or just as a ROM extension to the BIOS. And those, actually, there's two different versions of that. But mainly I want to look at that microcode aspect. And this is the Microcode Rom here. And you can see, on the MFM controller, it was an 8051 AH microcontroller. But this has a, probably a 8032. I see some Adaptec chips in there. Again, this got some dirty elements in there. Oh, okay, here's the microcontroller. I see the Intel marking on it. Get to where the ring light can pick it up. So that's an 8031AH microcontroller. And IBM did use, I think they've got an 8032 in for like the some of the SCSI adapters and things like that. But that's effectively the processor that runs this microcode on this chip. And with the different versions of that microcode, let me get the page back up. You can see all the cabling is about the same as the MFM controllers, the twist in the cable and things like that. It's got these nice cable ties. So this sits in there, and these connections are in the position for connection up to the drives. And this would be a single drive with this. The second drive goes through and adds that other data cable. But let's get looking at the page again. And I'll get back on the screen myself. Get that page up. Okay. Get to where I can interact with it. But this just shows the two diagrams almost side by side effectively. Real nice view here of all the components. And there's a link within the page that brings us down. So the first two listings are the BIOS extension ROMs. As I say, there's two different versions. There, I don't know what the differences are between them. When you got to the SCSI adapters, that was the hard drive capacity was tied into that. But just, there's just a few months of difference between these. I would go through, and it's ideal if you can to run the later version. At least we've got links you can download. You can write those images to an EEPROM. It tells you the size of what they are. They're 27, 128 EEPROMs. And then we get down to the Microcode Rom. And what it was is, as IBM went through and corrected bugs, there were issues, and the issues show up down below. They have the FRU listing, and go through and tell what symptoms could be present on the system with that microcode level. And I had the thought of going through and writing a program and using the system control blocks in the that IBM used in its programs to interact with the hard drive controller to get information to give data to the controller to give it a command and get data from it, even to report versioning information. And there is a even for the ESDI adapter, there's a the tech ref for it and a link on this page. You can look over all the details and look over all those commands that IBM had in that microcode to go through and get the version and things like that. What ended up being the case is since I was going to go through and look at the EEPROMs anyway, I read them on my EEPROM reader. I had most of them that were there. There's effectively, it goes up to version 7, but really I found that there are 6 effective versions that were out there. It didn't have 2 of those, but it had the other 4 that are linked, have links, or they're underlined in this case to get the images. And I've gone through and read the versions. The version information on those chips is just in plain text at a particular spot, and I found that that was much easier to read. Just I looked at the FRU on the chip and what the version information that it showed inside. Now, the version 2 still was ahead of the PS2 release date, the initial PS2 release date. And so I believe probably version 0001 was quashed, that effectively only version 0002 was the first release version. And as they went through and discovered bugs and fixed bugs with subsequent versions, they had later releases. And you can go through to where now you can get that latest image. And I've even got controllers off somewhere that even have those. I'd have to look through because I did have some ESDI controllers that went through and had that latest version. In fact, it's probably on this MUL 60 I have behind me. And I'll include the link to this page that so people can find and read and get information on what FRU is relates to a particular versioning of the microcode. You can look at that chart and compare this. In fact, let me do it on the internal webcam if I can get close enough to go through, and you just read that FRU off of there, and you look it up on the chart, and you say, it's that. You look up the ROM extensions. I can't get this adapter in real close to my webcam the way it is. In fact, I don't know. It's kind of really, it's a challenge to go through and find the right field of view, especially to get it to focus for down there. But you can look at, what version of the ROM extension is there as well. But probably it's a good point to go through, hide the page, and let's go through and take me off the internal webcam. So I know I have the full field of view that we can look at that up close. People can check later on what microcode version that is. That's a nice clean label. Relatively clean adapter otherwise. And as I say, I probably have, it looks like it, that I've got the probably the latest microcode on there. And it'd be great to go through and run the system and to be able to get that in software. I could probably go through and follow through with the program to eventually go through and do that. But to get that, retrieve that versioning in software. But let's go through. I'll probably get myself up on internal. As I say, this system should go through. I don't really remember what I've got on the system otherwise on the hard drive. Now this does have some more memory expansion adapter, and it's going to go through and it's going to count that now. It's got a megabyte on the motherboard and another 2 megabyte on that RAM expansion. And this is not by any means the end of the series, because I do still have some both MFM drives and ESDI drives that I need to test. I've tested the controllers and been pretty sure of what, marking what works, what doesn't work. But I haven't gone through and tested all the drives and seen what's on those. So this looks like it's just got MS-DOS. The diskette drive on this probably even works. Okay, and it loaded the mouse driver. I do have a mouse connected on here just in case. And it gave me the version DOS 6.20. And so, I don't need to go through and type the ver command to find out what the version is. But I'm trying to see. Even has the Kingston directory for, even though I've got the regular 286 CPU on there. And even that guest directory, I don't think it's anything like the iOmega zip drive driver or anything like that. The UNPC, I don't know how far that this will get. Some of this. In fact, let's look at the BIOS data. That's the ROM BIOS. There's only, I think, one version for the Model 60 anyway. Oh, and that just shows the extended BIOS data area. Really wanted to go through. There's programs here to look at the CMOS RAM, and of course this is a microchannel system. Sometimes this has to be stepped into and stepped back out just so it understands the microchannel system. Let's see what it does. Okay. And, okay, so there's your microchannel extended CMOS, 2 KB. That has your adapters and things like that. The F7FE is the ESDI controller. Remember, those are reverse by order. And the FF is just no adapter in that slot. And of course, some things like the extended CMOS holding that CPU reset signature, which is not present for the 286, so that Model 60 doesn't have that in the BIOS. But it would have things like the should have for the number of microchannel slots. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Yeah, that would be that, I think that's 018E position, register position, which is, it shows 08 in that register for 8 microchannel slots, things like that. But just that CMOS being holding part of the system configuration in it as well. Let's go through and escape. Did we ever see the system platform? Let's see how far this gets. I don't know if any of these will lock up on us or anything like that. Okay, the hard drive. So, that may have seized. But I'll give it the Control Delete. And okay, since we have the DOS 6.20, it's real easy to see things like the ROM extensions with programs like debug, but seeing that microcode version is not going to happen through debug. There's other structures that have to be set up. Let's look through on debug. Look through for some basic addresses here. Okay. As I cruise through some of the basic places that that ROM extension should be, I didn't see it, so it's nice going through and delving in to at least try and find it. But so that's the ESDI controller that was on the Mul 60 and Mul 80. There's particular submodels of those that run the ESDI controller, and I think the default ESDI drive for the Mul 60 and the low end Mul 80 was 70 megabyte. I do have some other drives I'll go through and test and see what's on them as well, but that's a good view, good overview. I wanted to show those microcode versions and kind of get people aware of that level. And so if you thought that this was an interesting video, go ahead and click on that like button, please. And as always, subscribe to my channel if you have not done so already. But that's all I have for now. This is IBM Museum. Thank you.